This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Chinese president praises bilateral ties with Spain and is set to address the Spanish Senate. Boat accident on Lake Victoria. Hello and welcome to Africa Live, coming to you from Nairobi. I am Peninah Karibe, also lined up this hour. In business, Egypt's finance minister hints of an end to the IMF loan program. And how an ancient city discovered near Johannesburg could affect the land ownership debate in South Africa. An official welcoming ceremony has been held for Chinese President Xi Jinping's visit to Spain. Xi and his wife Peng Liyuan were received by the Spanish King Philip VI and Queen Letizia. President Xi's three-day visit in Spain is at the invitation of the Spanish King. At a meeting held earlier at Zarzuela Palace, President Xi said since the two countries established a comprehensive strategic partnership in 2005, China and Spain have been improving bilateral ties, strengthening political mutual trust, expanding cooperation and maintaining closer people-to-people exchanges. He said Sino-Spanish ties are at the best period in history. Xi will also pay state visits to Argentina, Panama and Portugal and attend the Group of 20 summit in the Argentine capital, Buenos Aires, after the visit to Spain. Well, there is more on the agenda on Wednesday during President Xi's visit to Spain. The mayor of Madrid, Manuela Carmena, has presented the Chinese leader with the gold key of the capital city. The mayor hopes that Madrid could play a more important role in bilateral ties between Spain and China. President Xi Jinping will visit the Senate of Spain, the upper house of Spain's parliament. He will also deliver a speech there. According to Chinese ambassador to Spain, Xi's visit to Spain will open a new chapter for bilateral relations and vitalize the China-EU relations in the midst of rising unilateralism. Chinese President Xi Jinping arrived in Madrid for a three-day state visit on Tuesday. This is the first trip by a Chinese head of state to Spain in 13 years. President Xi says he will use the visit to consolidate relations and strengthen cooperation.
A dramatic welcome. Two Spanish fighter jets escort President Xi's plane as it enters the country's airspace. It's the first trip by a Chinese president to Spain in 13 years. The visit comes as the two countries mark the 45th anniversary of their diplomatic ties. Upon arrival, President Xi made note of the long history of Chinese-Spanish exchanges, thanks to trade along the maritime routes of the ancient Silk Road. He stressed that both sides are at a crucial stage for national reform and development. The Chinese president added that improved relations between China and Spain are not only in both countries' interests, but also a boon to peace and prosperity across the world. President Xi later met with King Felipe VI at the Palace of Zarzuela in Madrid. The Chinese leader said relations between the two countries are at their best period in history. He said China is willing to support Spain on issues involving its core interests and major concerns. King Felipe said Spain values its friendship with China and will continue to strengthen communication in multilateral affairs involving Beijing. The Spanish king also stressed his country will play a positive role in deepening Chinese-EU relations. The Chinese leader also attended a welcome dinner hosted by the Spanish royal family. The comprehensive strategic partnership that the two countries share dates back to 2005. And President Xi says he has high hopes that his visit will open up a brand new chapter in the relationship.
Over the years, Spain has emerged as one of China's closest partners in Europe. Let's take a look at the depth of their bilateral relations.
China is Spain's largest trading partner outside of the European Union. Their two-way trade surpassed $30 billion in 2017. As a prime example of China's opening up policy, Spain's exports to China rose by almost 30% last year. Their bilateral trade volume rose over 10% to $22 billion from January to August of this year. That number increased almost 8% to over $30 billion in 2017. Apart from trade, investment opportunities are rising. China is the 7th largest investor in Spain, with a total investment of close to $13 billion. According to data from the Spanish Institute of Foreign Trade, over 150 Chinese companies operate in the country, creating over 15,000 jobs. In China, around 700 Spanish companies have close to 2,500 projects with an investment of over $3.5 billion. People-to-people exchanges are one of the significant aspects of the relationship. In 2017, almost 700,000 Chinese tourists visited Spain. And this year, the Spanish language was included in China's high school curriculum.
Chinese company COSCO Shipping has acquired a 51% stake in Spain's largest maritime terminal operator, Northern Ports. The operator manages a pair of maritime terminals in the cities of Valencia and Bilbao, as well as dry terminals in Zaragoza and Madrid. Earlier in the summer, CGTN reporter Su Yuting visited the ports of Valencia and Bilbao to find out how they're benefiting the regional logistic and transport networks.
A northern gateway to the trading world, Valencia lies on Spain's east coast. Its hinterland reaches deep into the country, an area which accounts for half of Spain's GDP and its workforce.
The port of Valencia is one of the busiest seaports in Europe, and it's also the largest in Spain and in the Mediterranean Sea basin. Currently, nearly half of the traffic that Valencia port manages has its origin and destination in the Far East, and China remains as the main commercial partner in the site.
Last year, Chinese company COSCO Shipping acquired a controlling stake in Northern Ports, the company operating the container terminal of the port of Valencia. Northern Ports CEO Sun Kai said the port's strategic geographical position, operational capacity, the modern operation systems mean it can perfectly integrate into the transport networks of the entire region.
Valencia Port was ranked #1 in Mediterranean area, and number 5 in Europe, number 29 in the world, in terms of its throughput of 4.83 million in 2017, last year. Valencia is ideal, I think it's an ideal maritime gateway for Iberia Peninsula, and its connection to the center of Spain makes it a natural port for, I think, the Great Madrid area.
COSCO Shipping also operates the port of Bilbao, an entry point into Europe for ships coming across the North Atlantic. The general manager of the container terminal Bilbao says the port is constantly developing and China is among its 12 main markets.
Connecting China with Bilbao is a big opportunity for us. I think One Belt, One Road is one big country in a sole project. I think that China is opening to Europe, is opening the culture, is opening the way of connecting the business, and I think they are in a good trend, so we must be at your side.
Both port authorities in Valencia and Bilbao also hailed China's role in promoting their local economies.
Now, with these initiatives, well, I think it's a good opportunity for Chinese company to invest, for instance, in Spain and produce in Spain with the Chinese technology products with the seal of the European Union, and then it's an opportunity to open new markets in South America, in Africa, and even in the European market.
It's very important for Spain because Spain needs to move the traffic to the Mediterranean corridor and later throughout the railway and throughout the port of Bilbao continues to United Kingdom and the rest of Europe.
Many locals believe continued investment from Chinese companies can create more jobs and business opportunities in the future. Su Yuting, CGTN, Bilbao, Spain.
Argentina is hosting the G20 Leaders Summit in Buenos Aires this week. Much of the focus will be on the sideline meetings between heads of state, especially a planned meeting between Presidents Xi Jinping and Donald Trump. The hosts are hoping the summit will serve as a turning point towards economic recovery. CGTN's Joel Richards reports.
Roger Rojas has been working for a food delivery app since arriving in Argentina from Venezuela earlier this year. He was able to start work immediately, but there is a downside to joining the so-called gig economy.
Sometimes you can be waiting for 4 hours for one job, which pays less than $2. You have to be available all day and out on the street.
Workers in this growing temporary work industry in Argentina have now put their collective foot down. They formed a new trade union to argue for better conditions. This is just one group of workers who have protested labour conditions and the economic situation in Argentina.
Economic activity is down, unemployment is up, and inflation is hovering at around about 45% as we near the end of what has been a very difficult year for Argentina. The country has had to go to the International Monetary Fund for a $56 billion bailout. But the government does see the G20 as an opportunity.
Argentina had hoped to show a very different image to the world as it hosts the first G20 summit to be held in South America.
It's very important, and also it's an opportunity for the government in a moment in which the economic conditions in Argentina are quite severe.
Many analysts see this G20 as a chance for Argentina to change the narrative.
So Macri popularity has been damaged during this year. And G20 is an opportunity for the government and for the president to shift the agenda, to start talking about other priorities of his policies, not only the economy, and that start showing that Argentina re-engagement in the world can pay off and can bring opportunities for Argentina society.
The formal agenda for the G20 summit is expected to focus on issues from development and food security to the future of work. But as host, Argentina offers a clear snapshot of the complex problems facing many economies around the world. Joel Richards, CGTN, Buenos Aires.
Nigeria's defense minister has met his Chadian counterpart to discuss forming another regional frontline to stop the resurgence of Boko Haram in the Lake Chad Basin. The move follows escalating attacks on both military and civilian targets in recent weeks. CGTN's Kelechi Mekalam has the details.
A series of deadly attacks by Boko Haram on villages and the worst on a military base in Metele near Nigeria's border with Chad. More than 100 government soldiers were reportedly killed and large stockpiles of weapons carted away by ISIL-leaning faction of Boko Haram. Nigeria's government had insisted the group is defeated and all it was doing was a mop-up exercise, but the scale of attacks seen recently now threaten to undermine those claims. It appears once again Boko Haram is exploiting to full advantage the lack of defense within the Chad Basin to rebuild its strength. A regional front involving mostly Nigeria, Chad and Niger is widely credited for putting Boko Haram on the back foot.
Nigeria was the only country footing the bill of the multinational joint task force. Maybe the funding dried up. We're not sure what the reasons were. And then that was the time that the Nigerian government should have looked into the reasons and then made sure, because these countries are critical to the campaign. If these countries are not there, then it will be an open border, and these guys will be coming in both with human and then with the equipment I mentioned. So clearly, somebody dropped the ball, and I'm happy that President Buhari has sent his Minister of Defense in terms, almost on an emergency, trip to Chad.
President Buhari himself is expected to attend an annual military conference in the northeast this week. After the summit, he's expected to take time off to boost the morale of troops fighting the insurgents. He urgently needs his army on the offensive to roll back the insurgents who are reportedly controlling some territories in the northeast and seeking to expand their area of influence.
If you speak of northern and eastern Borno state, there appears to be a rebound, but especially the Islamic State in West Africa province. Its recruitment base is expanding, its ability to attack is expanding,
mainly because it has raided armories of the Nigerian military and now has more weapons. The morale of the Nigerian soldiers is dropping. It's at a level that was, similar to what we experienced in 2014 and early 2015.
The rise in Boko Haram attacks could be a tragic turn of events for Nigeria generally, but it will also play into the hands of President Buhari's political rivals to attack the cornerstone of his administration. Should things span out of control, he'll be left extremely vulnerable. But for now, the best way to silence his critics is defeating the insurgents. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Meanwhile, Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari is due to address a security conference in Maiduguri, the capital of Borno State. His visit comes amid an escalation in attacks by Boko Haram insurgents in the volatile northeast. CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam once again tells us more.
The meeting of security chiefs is taking place in Maiduguri, the capital of Borno State. President Muhammadu Buhari will preside over at the opening and later meet with some of the soldiers fighting on the front lines. The summit was originally due to be held in southern state of Edo, but at the last minute it was moved to the northeast. The spike in Boko Haram attacks in the region is expected to dominate the agenda. It's emerged that more than 100 government forces have been killed in a military base near Lake Chad. A faction of Boko Haram, calling itself ISIL in West African province, has claimed responsibility. Nearly 20 attacks on military installations in the region have been recorded in the past months. President Buhari is seeking a second term in office in February. He won the previous elections on the back of promises to defeat Boko Haram. His administration claims massive progress has been made against the insurgents. However, the recent spike in deadly attacks is a cause for concern. The president has delayed a scheduled week's leave to focus on plans to counter Boko Haram. He has also instructed his defense minister to canvass support from Niger and Chad. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is in Tunisia. He's been warmly welcomed to the North African country by President Beji Caid Essebsi. The two are seeking ways to improve bilateral relations. However, hundreds of Tunisians have staged protests against his visit. There has been mounting international concern about the killing of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi. CGTN's Tuli Shabalala has that story.
Mohammed bin Salman is visiting Tunisia. Investment and military cooperation are two of the issues on the agenda during his meetings with President Beji Caid Essebsi.
I'm like a son to the president. He's like a father to me. I cannot go on tour in North Africa without stopping by in Tunisia and stopping to see my father. The Tunisian people are very dear to Saudis, and Tunisian-Saudi relations are old. It is very positive to serve both nations. Our role as Saudi Arabia is to maintain this relationship.
I am honored that His Highness considers himself a son of mine. May this visit be a continuation of our country's relationship, not a relaunch, but a continuation.
It's the prince's first trip abroad since the killing of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Bin Salman has been linked to the murder, allegations the kingdom has repeatedly refuted. Hundreds of Tunisians have staged protests throughout the capital, protesting the prince's visit. The young Saudi royal is visiting Arab allies before heading to the G20 summit in Argentina later this week. Tuli Shabalala, CGTN.
You're watching Africa Live. Let's take a quick break. Straight ahead. We have an update on recovery efforts in Uganda after a deadly boat accident on Lake Victoria. And the latest political developments ahead of presidential polls in the DRC.
Agenda 2063 cannot move without the people.
Your stories.
Welcome to Africa Live. The President and the Minister said a whole lot of things last year, but we need to actually see those things happening.
Your views.
One way to get us out of that poverty is give free education to all girls who cannot afford to pay.
Your voice.
We hope that we can get back on.
Africa Live. We've got you covered. My home country lies at the foot of Africa, the southernmost tip of our beautiful continent and the unique point at which two great oceans meet. Now on a clear day in Cape Town, you can just make out Robben Island, the place where Nelson Mandela was jailed for so long. South Africa has changed so much in the years since then, but it is this country's history that shaped me and took me into reporting. I'm inspired by Africa's men and women of courage. It's the everyday hero who brings out my passion. The creatives, the decision makers, the risk takers who are shaping a bright African future. I see them in Cape Town. I see them in the pulsating city of Johannesburg. I see them across the continent, and I know our time has come.
CGTN is a platform where African voices can speak for themselves and take their stories to the world. My name is Lindy Mtongana, and I'm a news anchor and reporter for CGTN.
To Uganda now, rescue crews are continuing to try to retrieve the wreckage of a boat which capsized on Lake Victoria on Saturday. At least 30 people have been pronounced dead. Police believe more than 100 partygoers were on board at the time. Isabel Nakiria has this report from the scene.
Hopes of finding more survivors here are fading. Search teams have been trying to retrieve the wreckage of the boat since Monday and locate all missing bodies.
People are getting tired, our divers are tired, and we are trying to see that we try other means. As of now, we are trying to see that we use those means of using this chain link.
Another attempt to retrieve the wreckage is underway. Rescue teams here believe there could be some bodies trapped beneath it. Initial investigations now indicate the boat was in a poor condition and was overloaded when it capsized. Partygoers are also reported to have ignored calls not to board the vessel. Among the dead is a fisherman who rushed to help when the boat sank.
He had gone back for the second round when his boat also got overloaded and sank. He knew how to swim, but many people held on to him, and that is how they all went down.
Onlookers continue to flock to Mutima Beach in Mukono district where the boat capsized. Police now say they may have overestimated the number of missing people. So far, 27 are known to have survived the accident and 32 bodies have been found since Saturday. The owners of the boat are also among the dead. Police say they intend to question some of the survivors as the investigation into the disaster continues. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN, Mukono District, Central Uganda.
As we've been reporting, 4 promising new treatments for those infected with Ebola are being trialled in the Democratic Republic of Congo. But to date, the most important way to contain the spread of the deadly virus has been the use of vaccines. Our Washington correspondent Daniel Branches has been speaking with Dr. Anthony Fauci of the U.S. National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases about some of the challenges.
Well, this vaccine called VSV Ebola vaccine is a vaccine that was developed some time ago and was used with some efficacy in Guinea in the West African outbreak that started in 2014. So we know that there's data to strongly suggest that this vaccine works. So right now, today, with the outbreak that's occurring in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, there is a technique or a strategy called ring vaccinations. So when you identify a person who is infected, documented to be infected, you look at the contacts of that person and the contacts of those contacts. And the way you try and contain the outbreak is you specifically vaccinate those groups of people. Now, there have been so many infections thus far in the DRC that has triggered the utilization of almost 30,000 vaccinations with this VSV Ebola vaccine.
How challenging is it to roll out these clinical solutions in such a difficult environment?
It is really quite problematic when you're thinking of both taking care of a person and giving clinical care, doing the kind of contact tracing that you need to do to contain the epidemic, isolating the people, vaccinating the people who are not infected, and treating with anti-Ebola therapeutics the people who are infected. To do all of that in an environment that's quite unstable and that is dangerous when it comes to the violence that is going on. Just recently, there were 11 peacekeepers that were killed in an attack in the northeastern part of the DRC.
Other vaccines are also being trialed on the ground in real time.
Right.
How important is it that for your strategy that you have several vaccines on the go?
It is always important when you're dealing with infectious diseases to never put your eggs all in one basket, both to see if you can get the best possible one, and then also for the supply of it. If you need it for a lot of people, having 2 suppliers of vaccines is very important when you want to use it on a broader scale. There's a trial going on in West Africa, in Liberia, Sierra Leone, Guinea, and Mali, of looking at the VSV vaccine, the one we're using in DRC, as well as another product that's made by Johnson & Johnson, comparing it to a placebo to see, A, is it very safe, which we have good reason to believe that at least one of them is, and very likely the other one, but importantly, does it induce the kind of response that you would predict would mean that it would be protective? We call that immunogenicity. So at the same time as we're utilizing a vaccine in the field to see if it can stop the outbreak, we're testing it against another vaccine in another part of the region.
Hundreds of Congolese have welcomed opposition leader Felix Tshisekedi back home from Kenya. He has been endorsed to run for the presidency in next month's elections. He's up against another 19 candidates, as CGTN's Chris Ochamringa reports.
Supporters of the leader of the Union for Democracy and Social Progress Party, Felix Tshisekedi, have come out in their numbers to welcome him home. After a meeting in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi, Tshisekedi has been chosen as the presidential candidate for a new opposition bloc nominated by fellow candidate Vital Kamerhe. The 2 opposition leaders have formed an alliance after pulling out of another coalition that chose lawmaker Martin Fayulu as its candidate for next month's elections. Some analysts believe the move has weakened the opposition, which had initially agreed to unite in order to present a stronger challenge to President Joseph Kabila's hand-picked candidate Emmanuel Ramazani Shadary. Government critics have been calling for a boycott of the polls over the use of electronic voting machines, which they claim will be used to rig the polls. Tshisekedi, however, says his supporters will vote, but will closely monitor the ballot counting process.
The December election is crucial for many Congolese who are eager to witness the country's first peaceful transfer of power. Chris Ochamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
Meanwhile, President Joseph Kabila's chosen successor in the upcoming presidential poll in DR Congo has unveiled his campaign platform. Making his first public remarks, Emmanuel Shadary told supporters that he would reinforce the authority of the state, diversify the economy, and create job opportunities. Meanwhile, the African Union Peace and Security Council is urging the European Union to lift sanctions against ruling party candidate Emmanuel Ramazani Shadary, saying the lifting of sanctions will help lead to free, fair, credible and peaceful elections in the DRC. Shadary set out an $86 billion 5-year development plan for this sprawling Central African country. He made the pledges 3 days ahead of the official start of campaigning.
I was chosen as a candidate for the presidential election by President Joseph Kabila, a Katangese. Katanga has given me everything.
Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed Ali says his meeting with more than 80 opposition leaders has been highly productive. They've discussed opening up the country's political landscape as well as reforming legislation to allow opposition parties more freedom to operate. CGTN's Girum Chala has more.
Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed Ali has appealed to opposition leaders to focus on the future rather than dwell on the past.
We have so many historic problems. There are no outright winners or losers. Everyone has suffered. However, if we go back and forth and reopen old wounds, we risk ruining the progress that we have made.
The Prime Minister has underlined the important role all political parties have to play.
Oh, okay. Okay. Eh? King Philip. There's somebody else is talking to me about taking my voice levels. I don't understand. Huh? Yeah. Hannah, thank you very much for that. Indeed, let's continue with Africa Live. We move on to environmental matters. And many parts of Africa are experiencing severe effects of climate change. In Malawi, rising temperatures coupled with deforestation are causing water bodies to dry up, threatening the livelihood of many communities.
Just 4 months earlier, the fishing harbour at Kachulu on the western shores of Lake Chilwa in Malawi was bustling with fishermen and traders. Presently, hundreds of fishing boats sit marooned on cracked dry mud as vultures fly overhead.
I ferry people from Chizi Island to Kachulu, but the drying up of the lake has pushed my colleagues and me out of business. At the moment, we have no source of income because of this problem.
The drying up of the lake has put us in an awkward situation. We had a good fish market. Now we are idle because there is no fish. I am here just to look after these facilities, hoping that the lake will recover.
Chilwa, the country's second largest lake after Lake Malawi, is shallow in saline. and particularly prone to seasonal variations in water levels. The last time it got so dry was during a drought in 1991.
Climate change contributes to the current recessions that we are experiencing, because you can see that in 2012 there was a recession where the lake lost about 80% of its water. Then it recovered in 2013, but not fully. So since then, every year we've been experiencing these recessions.
1.5 million people live around the Lake Chilwa Basin, which is one of the most densely populated areas in southern Africa. The lake is a key source of livelihood for area residents.
Before the lake dried up, I was able to make 5,000 kwacha or more per day. Now we have no business because of what has happened to the lake.
The lake once provided about 30% of the country's fish and is home to nearly 200 unique waterbird species. Records show it has dried completely several times in the last 100 years, with every dry spell longer than the previous one. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
The China International Import Expo attracted exhibitors from around the world keen on marketing their products. Nigeria was among the attendees and showcased its developments in the agricultural sector, particularly cassava. Nigeria is the world's largest producer of cassava. 60% of the annual harvest is exported to China. CGTN's Terry Wangari has more.
Bajebo operates a cassava processing plant in the suburbs of Lagos, Nigeria, which produces cassava flour and tapioca chips. In 2018, he decided to venture into the Chinese market due to strong demand.
We have large quantity of cassava that we're trying to see how we can take the opportunity of the expo. We are trying to do now is to see how we can do very large exportation of cassava-related items to China, and in turn get exchange of probably, like, for example, arming to export processing.
The China International Import Expo demonstrates China's determination to further expand imports. It has provided a platform for Nigerian cassava processors and farmers to engage with Chinese stakeholders in cultivation and processing.
I hope to take the opportunity of the next coming expo, particularly that of China, for us to see how Nigerian can benefit from the largesse they have given to the country vis-a-vis cassava-related product, among other products that are open.
Nigerian economists say that the Nigerian cassava industry could seize the opportunities brought by the expo to promote the development of Nigeria's economy.
I believe it's about China trying to open the doors to welcome more business collaboration, develop the rural people on varieties of cassava that meets the demand of what the Chinese want. It's going to be a very big opportunity for us to embrace, and it will trickle down, solve a lot of unemployment amongst the youths in Nigeria, because the value chain of cassava is huge.
Nigeria is rich in cassava because of its natural environment. The annual output for cassava in Nigeria is more than 50 million tons, and it's currently the world's largest producer of cassava. Terry Wangari, CGTN.
All right, let's take you back now to Spain, and an official welcoming ceremony has been held for Chinese President Xi Jinping. She and his wife Peng Liyuan were received by the Spanish King Felipe VI and Queen Letizia. President Xi's 3-day visit in Spain is at the invitation of the Spanish King. CGTN's Al Goodman joins me now from Madrid for more on this. Al, what are the key highlights from President Xi Jinping's visit so far?
Hi there. Well, President Xi is speaking in the Spanish Senate behind me. You can see it right now. I'm listening right now on a live stream, a translation into Spanish from his Mandarin Chinese into Spanish on this phone, on this other headphone, which I'm now going to disconnect because I'm talking to you. Here's what he said so far. That speech is still going on. He has said that that China and Spain have been connected for 2,000 years by land routes, for the last 600 years by sea, and now for the past 45 years by diplomatic relations. This is the anniversary of that establishment of the diplomatic relations, one of the reasons that President Xi has come here to Spain. He is also putting a lot of time in his speech into China's signature development policy, One Belt and One Road. He says it is a good policy that will be sustainable development for China. Now, Spanish officials have said they support this initiative. They are a part of some parts of the initiative, but a senior official at the Prime Minister's office told reporters yesterday, I was at that briefing, that Spain is not going to sign on as a country to the One Belt, One Road policy. It will follow with some other European countries saying we respect it, but the European policy is to be engaged with all of Asia and not just with China. But the speech from President Xi continues at this time, basically talking about China's growth as an industrial power, as what he said just now, the world's second largest economy, but the first economy for industry. Back to you.
And Al, what should we expect next in President Xi's itinerary?
Well, in just a few minutes, when he finishes his visit here at the Spanish Senate, he's going to get into these cars in his motorcade, and he's going to drive off to his next appointment. Now, the next important appointment is coming up in a little over an hour. He's due over at the Spanish Prime Minister's compound on the outskirts of Madrid for the main bilateral meeting. And that will be a meeting with the Prime Minister, President Xi and the Prime Minister, then with their advisors. Then the two leaders are due to preside over the signings of about 18 different bilateral and business accords. They're not actually going to sign themselves, but they will be presiding over these accords, which will strengthen and deepen the relations between the two countries, which is the purpose of this trip. It will include, for instance, new opening for Spain to export its premium, quite delicious ham, and also its table grapes. And China is also making some investments here, so there's a lot of business going on. Really, besides the pomp and circumstance and the protocol, this trip is really all about business, analysts say. Back to you.
Al, how would you describe the relations between China and Spain?
Well, they have been growing exponentially, really, their ties. It's a $30 billion trade relationship between the two countries, very much in China's favor. Spain imports a lot more goods than it exports. It has about a $20 billion trade deficit with China. Now, that's a similar situation as some other countries here in Europe. And part of this trip is that China, we are told, is opening up and allowing more imports. So that's where we were talking about the Spanish ham, the Spanish grapes going over. But generally, what the Spanish side is saying, and what we're just hearing President Xi saying here in the Senate in his speech, is that the relationship is good. But President Xi himself has said he wants to bring these 45 years of diplomatic ties and launch into what he called a new era. So they want to strengthen and deepen the two ties, which are already good. Back to you.
And Al, how are Spanish citizens and the local media responding to President Xi's visit?
Well, there was hundreds of Chinese citizens or Spanish Chinese. We didn't get a chance to talk to all of them, from student groups and business groups, many of them wearing red jackets, signs in Mandarin Chinese, signs in English, welcome, it said. They lined the area outside the Royal Palace, which is just over here, about a 5-minute walk from where we're standing here in the heart of the Spanish capital, to welcome President Xi and the First Lady to the ceremony of the review of the troops. The Spanish media has been covering the president's visit. It is not the top story in Spain. There are many other domestic issues that are higher up and being reported more. One of the leading newspapers is reporting that Spain, what I just mentioned, is they're making their main story is about Spain is not going to sign on as a country to the One Belt and One Road. But another newspaper is where President Xi had this long opinion article that he submitted to the newspaper, and they published, where he was talking about this new era of relations and the importance of deepening the ties. So people are watching this, and especially today with all the pomp and circumstance, there's a lot more attention because this is the main business day of the trip. having spent the first night getting to meet the King and the Queen, but now he's really down to the main business on here the second day of the visit. Back to you. All
right, Al Goodman, live for us there in Madrid. Thank you very much. Al Goodman reporting on President Xi Jinping currently addressing the Spanish Senate. We will bring you the highlights from that speech and, of course, the developments from Spain on President Xi's visit there here on CGTN. Coming up in business news. Egypt's finance minister hints of an end to the IMF loan program. And global audit firm KPMG picks an outsider to run its troubled South African units.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Egypt has no plans to extend its current funding assistance program with the International Monetary Fund when it expires in 2019. Finance Minister Mohamed Maid, however, says the government will maintain a looser relationship with the multilateral lender to reassure investors. The IMF advanced Cairo $12 billion to finance economic reforms. The three-year program has helped pull the economy from the brink of crisis. Egypt floated its pound in November 2016, helping to secure the IMF loan. The funds will help cut the budget deficit to 8.1%. The IMF-backed measures have helped attract billions of dollars of foreign investments into domestic bills and bonds and replenish foreign reserves. Global auditing firm KPMG has named an outsider as the chief executive for its South African unit. Ignatius Sehole will be charged with retaining clients after the company's involvement in political scandals. He is currently the deputy CEO of rival firm PwC in South Africa. He takes over from the Nramulo Dlomu, who has been at the helm for a year. Sehole has been brought in to restore the company's reputation. KPMG has been losing clients in the last 18 months. Its internal probe found flaws in the work carried out for the controversial Gupta family, which is alleged to have used their links to former President Jacob Zuma to amass wealth. The Guptas and Zuma have denied any wrongdoing. The audit firm has said it is cooperating with authorities and addressing its shortcomings. The world's first sustainable blue economy conference is underway in Nairobi. About 17,000 delegates are participating. So far, more than 100 countries have pledged their commitment to advancing the development of a marine-based economy, one that will also protect ecosystems. Uche Okoronko is there and brings us the latest.
The UN's Economic Commission for Africa estimates Africa's blue economy is worth about $1 trillion. But it loses over $40 billion a year to illegal fishing and logging of mangroves along its coast. That is why the conversation on the sidelines of this global forum has now turned to the role of governors and mayors in their local communities.
Many of the world's cities are sea-facing or river-facing or lake-facing, and therefore their interaction with those water bodies is a crucial part of keeping those water bodies protected and safe, but also of maximizing the utility of those water bodies for our people.
For example, Kenya's western county of Kisumu is an inland port city that lies along Lake Victoria, the world's second largest freshwater lake. An estimated 3.5 million Kenyans depend on the lake directly or indirectly for their livelihoods. In recent years, fish stocks have dwindled significantly due to a rising population and overfishing.
Our own people cultivate too much near the riverbeds, so a lot of silt is let into the lake. That has made the Gulf, for example, lose a lot of species of fish so that we can no longer fish in the Gulf. What we are doing at the moment is, first of all, stopping this kind of behavior by enforcing the law, environmental laws. also working with the national government to do so. The other one is we are deliberately going to protect the lakefront by developing the lakefront in Sumu as a tourist and walkway site so that people don't misuse it for putting waste into the lake.
Here at the conference, experts from the UN's Economic Commission for Africa say the answer to advancing growth in the blue economy, while also protecting resources, lies in national development plans that trickle down to local communities.
The greatest risk, I think, is in treating it as an add-on to our developmental efforts. Blue economy has to be seen and treated in the same way we treat petroleum resources or mineral resources or all these other things that people are very familiar with. The resources in the sea have to be managed, have to be planned, and have to be harnessed in the same way we harness this other thing for sustainable development. If we don't do that, we are headed for real trouble.
Experts also point to the importance of fostering collaboration between international organizations such as the International Seabed Authority. The organization has established strategic partnerships with the AU and UNECA to better inform decision-making of African states.
We really need to raise the awareness of the possibilities, the future possibilities of the marine mineral industry for African countries. And the second part of the project is capacity building. It's extremely important to improve the capacity of African states, both the human and technological capacity to manage a future marine minerals industry, and to build capacity amongst, for example, government officials, ocean scientists, oceanographers, and others who might be involved in this future industry.
The need for a radical vision that values communities and livelihoods may be that starting point that African cities need to jumpstart their blue economies. Uche Okoronkwo, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
The discovery of an ancient African city outside Johannesburg may be pertinent in the debate on land ownership in South Africa. Using laser technology, Kweneng City is estimated to date back to the 15th century. It was inhabited by the Bakwena people long before the arrival of the first European settlers. CGTN's Julie Sher reports.
University professor Karim Sadar stumbled upon the Kweneng City ruins on an early morning walk in the Seker Bosrand Hills, a vast area in the south of Johannesburg.
I kept stumbling over rocks. I kept hurting my shin, stubbing my toes and falling on my face, and I kept thinking, what are all these rocks here? So I looked into it further, and they're all stone walls, lots of old ruins.
The remnants of the architectural stone walls, now buried under vegetation and a colonial history, dates back to the 15th century. It was more than 200 years before the European settlers set foot on South African soil.
For Bakwena of Bamari Apohole, this means a lot to us. It's a huge finding, and more especially that it's a scientific find. It is history that lies in oral history. It's a story that is told by our grandparents. But now that the scholars and academics has come to the fore and put this vast information into evidence that can't be disputed by anyone.
It's believed that at one point about 10,000 people lived in Kweneng City. They would have been part of the Botswana people of Bakwena, Mahe, Apohole, likely farmers ruled by a king.
Through the colonial times, essentially this knowledge of cities, of civilizations, African civilization, were downplayed and denigrated. The idea of their forefathers having built a city here before any contact with the Europeans, I think, has been a morale booster, if nothing else. It's given them a great deal of pride in their own history.
There has to be a discussion between those powers, be in the government and the Land Claims Commission in this instance, and Bakwena Bamagapao. But because of it's a build-up area, there's no one who's going to tell us not to claim it. We will claim it, and we will forever fight for this.
Archaeologists believe they have only scratched the surface. There may be several other lost African cities still to be found in a 700-kilometer radius between Johannesburg and the Northern Cape. It could help put an end to a heated debate around who owns the land in South Africa. Julie Shire, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
South Africa's women's football team will feature at the first ever FIFA Women's World Cup next year in France after reaching the final of the Women's Africa Cup of Nations on Tuesday night. The Banyana claimed a 2-0 victory over Mali in their semi-final in Cape Coast, Ghana. Late goals from Tembi Katlana and Lebohang Ramalepe sees South Africa through to Saturday's final against Nigeria. Head coach Desiree Ellis dedicated the achievement to coaches and players past and present, while veteran captain Janine van Wyk admits it is a massive relief to have qualified and believes that the team from the Rainbow Nation's hard work has finally paid off.
We are going to France. We're going to the World Cup. But more than that, it's for the whole of the country. It's for all the players. It's for all the coaches. It's for everyone who has played a part over the last many years.
Yeah, I'm extremely happy, incredibly proud of the team, the efforts that we put in throughout the whole tournament. There was never a moment that we gave up, and we knew that this game was the most important one for us to come here and set a target to reach the World Cup. I can now finally say that we have done so, and I'm over the moon. I'm lost for words. I don't even know what to say.
Turning to the UEFA Champions League Group H, where Juventus booked their ticket to the knockout phase of the competition with a 1-0 win against Valencia. The Italian giants only needed a draw against the Spanish side to advance out of Group H. Cristiano Ronaldo sent a powerful drive straight at Valencia's goalkeeper Neto in the 3rd minute. In the 27th, the visitors had a chance after a partial clearance but fired wide of the target. The breakthrough finally came right on the hour mark when Ronaldo shook off Gabriel with some fancy footwork and delivered to Mario Mandzukic for the finish. Valencia then thought they had scored 2 minutes later, but the effort was ruled out as it finally ended 1-0 to Juventus. The other match in Group H, so Manchester United leave it till late to beat Young Boys 1-0 at Old Trafford. 4 minutes in, Jesse Lingard set up Marcus Rashford, whose shot from outside of the box was just a bit too high. In the 66th minute, Rashford again missed another opportunity as his left-footed shot went close. The Red Devils seemed to be headed for a goalless draw when Marwan Fellaini turned out and fired in the winner late in the encounter, much to the relief of Old Trafford and manager Jose Mourinho. His celebrations evident from the touchline as his side advanced 2nd in the group. More Champions League as Lyon hosted Manchester City in Group F with Pep Guardiola's side out to avenge their loss against the French side earlier this season. But City nearly found themselves on the back foot when Maxwell Cornet came close to scoring twice in front of goal. 10 minutes after the break, Cornet finally got his reward in some style, giving the hosts the lead with a fine left foot finish. Guardiola's side soon equalized when Aymeric Laporte headed in just after the hour mark. 10 minutes from the end, 22-year-old Cornet struck again with a low-angled finish, but there was still more ahead when Sergio Aguero made no mistake off a corner to salvage a hard-earned point for his side. And finally to Group G, where Roma hosted Real Madrid in Group G with both sides targeting top spot. Not much in the first half as the Romans wasted an opportunity to go ahead. Within 2 minutes of the restart though, Gareth Bale pounced on a poor header to finish into the corner. The visitors doubled the advantage before the hour mark through Lucas Vázquez to win 2-0 and end Roma's 8-match unbeaten home run in the Champions League. And that's it for this edition of Africa Live. We welcome your feedback. Send it to the contacts on the screen and follow us on our digital media platform. I'm Peninah Karibe. Thank you for watching.